everyone, and welcome to today's conversation. I'm Monica Obniski. I'm an architecture and design historian. I'm a curator now at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta and a recently transplanted Chicagoan. And I'm here with Rob Kleinschmidt, who's an architect who completed his architecture degree from the University of Illinois and his graduate degree in architecture from Columbia University. Rob worked for many years at SOM before striking out to create a firm focused on interior architecture and space planning in Chicago, first with Paul Kleinschmidt and now through RDK Design. Good morning, Rob. Did I get that correct?
It was brilliant, Monica. I couldn't hope for a better introduction.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad Thank you. I'm glad I didn't misspeak.
Not at all.
Wonderful.
Not one word.
So we are speaking with Rob this morning because of his contribution as furnishings consultant to an exhibition at the Farnsworth House. And I'm just going to start sharing my screen now. So that we can look at some slides. All right. And here we go. So Rob worked as a consultant for this exhibition at the Farnsworth House called Edith Farnsworth Reconsidered, which unfortunately due to the COVID-19 pandemic is temporarily closed to visitors. And I just want to tell people that the exhibition was planned in conjunction with the National Trust for Historic Preservation's 2020 Her Turn initiative, which explores under-recognized female narratives. Now, just by way of a small introduction, this pioneering patron of one of the great houses of modern architecture is sometimes forgotten because of the commanding, or one might say overshadowing, presence of the architect that she selected to build her country house, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. So she hired him in 1945, and because the house, and actually before the house was completed, Mies displayed his design for the Farnsworth House at the 1947 exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And this show, of course, was dedicated to his work, essentially letting the architectural community know about this glass pavilion that he was building out on the Fox River in Illinois. Now in 1951, Dr. Edith Farnsworth was able to begin using her Mies-designed country house, but she decided against incorporating the furniture that he recommended and installed her own choice in furnishings. And now what we're showing you on the screen is how visitors like myself, when I've visited the Farnsworth House in the past, have experienced the house. And Rob, I think this is where we should start, because I absolutely love the premise of this show, to show how Edith Farnsworth actually furnished her house against the wishes of Mies. And so I guess my first question for you, Rob, is why do you think it's important to show how Edith Farnsworth furnished her home?
Well, it was a weekend house. She was a prominent doctor and physician at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Northwestern has one of the finest reputations in the country for a woman to not only be in a position, but her focus was female health issues, kidneys, liver, and she met Mies at a dinner party in the mid-40s. And you see the furniture now that is showing on the screen, which there are three elements on the far left. There are two Jensrism lounge chairs, Jensrism being Danish from Copenhagen, and a day bed there. And now we see the current things as it in this past image, as it has been reconstructed today. I did a lot of research with Scott Mahaffey, who was very generous in loaning me historical photographs and archival. So we've been able to receive a number of donations from the original manufacturers, and know presently, Knoll International is selling and reproducing the lounge chairs on the left and foreground. They donated those in addition to the table between the two chairs, which was white steel T angle, like the alphabetical letter T that Florence Knoll designed in the mid-40s. Now you see the image on the screen as it is today, as Scott assisted me, and he himself actually assembled the chairs in the foreground. But she did utilize, this is Dr. Edith Farnsworth, a number of Swedish designs, and behind the daybed was reconstructed and donated, and that was something that is there right now, and the famous Triennale lamp behind it.
Thank you for pointing out that what we're looking at now is a photograph of the exhibition as it is currently installed, and then of course we're looking at some of the historic photographs. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your process as we were looking at these historic photographs, as you were looking at these historic photographs, and then, you know, in particular, you mentioned the Jens Rissam chairs, which I'm just going to take my pointer here, and for those that don't know, that's the chairs that Rob is talking about, and then this is the Florence Knoll. But Rob, I'm also really curious about these chairs here in the foreground. Can you?
Well, apparently through archival photographs, Scott Mahaffey, the executive director of the Farnsworth House, determined that they were Asian, possibly Japanese, and he was able to acquire something very, very similar. And you can see the previous shots showed the actual ones, and he assembled these himself. So there they are, very, very low if I'm pointing right here. And Scott reconstructed those, which is wonderful. And there, at that point in that early photograph, Dr. Edith Farnsworth wanted a closet, and so Mies designed one, and that is now in the space. And I worked Tuesday, and it was documented and photographed again yesterday by a very talented architectural photographer. At any rate, that unit, it does not show in these pictures because it was earlier. But the daybed was there, and then Scott had the drawings, and it was reconstructed. And one of the board members donated that and the upholstery of that.
Oh, interesting. Well, actually, speaking of the daybed, and here's another historic photo that I just love, and I had to put it in here because seeing, and this isn't Dr. Farnsworth, this I take it as one of her friends sitting on this daybed.
Correct.
And of course, it makes me wish that she were resting in a Charlotte Perriand chaise longue, right? That I wish that she had chosen that as a piece of furniture. But this daybed is, you know, it seems really nice. But what I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the daybed a little bit more, but then also the furniture that we see behind, which you referenced earlier, because, you know, this reminds me of when you and I met in Palm Springs, and I was telling you about a show that I was working on called Scandinavian Design in the United States. And then we struck up a conversation following that chance encounter, and it was largely due to this furniture. These were designed by Bruno Mattsson.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, Swedish.
And then I believe his sons are running his business, and they graciously said, we will be more than pleased to donate the chairs. Now, one was a chair with an ottoman, and the other was a chaise. They no longer make that, so they gave us 2 chaises. But with the webbing and everything, we're thrilled to have them. They're perfect in this place. This is where she had them. So she really honored a number of modern Swedish designers and Danish with the Jens Rissam. I believe she purchased, as Scott knows through the correspondence, a number of these elements to furnish the house at the first modern furniture retail store that sold furniture by architects, which was called Baldwin Kingery. Baldwin was Kitty Baldwin, who married Harry Weiss. You went very quickly past the dining room.
We'll get back to the dining room in a second, but since you brought up Baldwin Kingery, you know, I love, well, first of all, I love the fact that she bought some of these things there. But I'll just.
And this is a photograph of the Ohio Street window at Baldwin Kingery, which I learned about. And when I was going to undergraduate school, I started out going to the Illinois branch. At that time, it was Navy Pier. And after rigorous design classes, I would try to cleanse my head and my mind. And I would walk from Navy Pier to Michigan and Ohio in the Baldwin Kingery store, and was paradise. They were the first to sell Alto retail in Chicago.
Well, I want to hear more about that, but I just want to set up for the audience who may not be so versed, and you started to speak about it. But you know, for me, this idea of the post-war home and the commodity culture that it generated is, you know, an inherently political one, but another approach to kind of looking at these things is really unpacking Farnsworth choices in, you know, exploring these sites of consumption. So as you mentioned, the store, Baldwin Kingery, was founded in Chicago in 1947 by Harry Weiss, by his wife, Kitty Weiss, and then the interior designer, Jody Kingery. And I love, you know, as a Chicagoan, and of course, as someone who has just worked on a Scandinavian design show, that this was the place where, as you mentioned, you could buy Finnish design by Alvar Aalto, you could buy Swedish design by Bruno Mattsson, you could buy the Dane Boge Mogensen, among a whole slew of other kind of local and other sourced furniture. So,
of course, Knoll International and Herman Miller.
Right.
Correct.
And so Rob, for you, I mean, first of all, I didn't know that you were a student at this time, and so you could actually go into the store.
Absolutely, and the Weisses later became very close friends of mine, and Kitty's brother, Benjamin Baldwin, was one of my absolutely greatest mentors. And so it just all came together in a beautiful way, and I so admire that. And Harry Weiss himself loaned us office space while our first office in Harris Bank was being built. And he did it totally rent-free, said, use my secretary, Marilyn Wolf, whatever you need. And we were in the 5th floor of his major primary suite of offices on Hubbard Street between State and Dearborn. And that was all 1976.
That's incredible, Rob. That's incredible. So I'll just ask you a question, since you're intimately familiar with this store, having visited it, you know, when it was around.
Place of Baldwin Kingery in history?
Yeah, in Chicago's history in particular. What do you?
It gives me great pleasure because I bought a number of things there, and my parents were approaching, I believe it was their 40th wedding anniversary, and I bought an Orfors chandelier. Orfors, one of the finest Swedish glass makers, and this was a very, very pyramidal shade in charcoal gray glass, somewhere around 18 inches in diameter. It dropped down from the ceiling, probably 4 feet, in my parents' dining room, and it was a dining room, and all the relatives chipped in. And I constantly went there to check on it. It took about 3 months to receive it after I selected it from a catalog, but there was no other store in Chicago at that time, retail, other than Baldwin Kingery, and then following it on Central Avenue near, I believe, Diversey and Fullerton, became the Today store of Polk Brothers, which was a major primary appliance store. The only parallel today that we know in the Chicago area is an appliance store called ABT, Apt. from that family, but they had, and I was growing up and beginning my career from high school to architecture, and would go to the Today Store on my bike and study all the furniture. And I went past in the alley, and they had discarded some classics like a Charles and Ray Eames, the original potato chip chair. I brought one of that home, and I called my father, and he had to come in his car and pick it up, and we reupholstered it. But it was the classic first molded plywood Eames chair. Then there was a circle chair. And I mean, these things were thrown out in the alley. So I furnished my room in the basement with all these mid-century modern classics. And 2 or 3 of them were from the Today Store at Polk Brothers.
Wow,
I don't believe Polk Brothers exists today, but it was the mecca for modern appliances of every kind and sort.
amazing.
Along with Baldwin Kingery.
Yeah. And again, speaking of mid-century furnishings, and since we quickly passed over the dining room, I just want to go back to this image.
Yes.
The historic image of the dining room. And I spy another key piece of Danish furniture here in Edith's dining room. So if you could tell us a little bit about this.
Oh, with pleasure. I was there Tuesday, and I wish you could see these photographs, and maybe we can get you the current, because how it's reconstructed. And we have it set for dinner, and there's a beautiful orangey red azalea plant that's live off center at one end. So these are the classic Hans Wegner teak chair with a cane seat and the beautiful, beautiful woven seat in that. And that is probably the most famous chair and the most brilliant chair that Hans Wegner, leader of Denmark's finest furniture designer. This is absolutely the zenith of his achievement. And Edith used this as a host and hostess chair in her dining room at each end. That there are chairs in the center now that you see, 2 on the right and 2 on the left. Those are from Cassina, and that Eero Saarinen used those in black in the MIT chapel in Cambridge. And Edith used 6 of these adjacent to the table. And the dining table is, I believe it's 36 by 84, designed by none other than Florence Knoll. But what makes it so beautiful and so unique, again, she used the alphabetical letter T as a T section for the white steel, which matched the metal of the exterior of the house. So let's just say that was a brilliant stroke on her part. And also, I really want to use the word carefully, Edith's example of ingenuity. This is the second piece of furniture in white steel that picked up the structure of the house in white. And it's beautiful because there's a teak top that spans beyond the base of the table that supports it, and it floats out like the wings of an airplane. And it's a beautiful, beautiful teak top. So in a way, she instinctively demonstrated very good, unique taste. The floor of the house was 2 foot by 3 foot honed, matte finish slabs of travertine, inside and out. Inside the house, on the upper terrace and the lower terrace, the same travertine. And Mies loved travertine. It was one of his favorite stones. And that all began with the Barcelona Pavilion, Barcelona, Spain in 1928, 29.
Rob, you brought up this point, which I did not notice when I was looking at the photographs, but I'm so glad you highlighted it. that Edith had chosen these two knoll pieces with the white steel and how they mirror one another. And it really is a stroke of genius on her part.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so I'm gonna ask you a very long and rambling question that
Please do it. I'm having a wonderful time doing this, Monica. I'm
so,
enjoying every second.
good. So for me, again, I think her furniture, and this is not controversial, but her furniture choices also comment on her taste level, right? That as a mid-American woman buying these particular designers, she's saying something. And so it's interesting.
Without formal education in architecture and design.
Right, right. And so, just thinking about the moment in the mid-century, I think it's interesting to think about what she's doing because she's both heeding the warning of Elizabeth Gordon, right? You'll remember this article.
Of course. I would never.
To the Next America, right? In the House Beautiful article, in which she railed against the imported international style architecture and design, advocating
absolutely.
for something that's homegrown. But Gordon, this is interesting, made special exemptions for Scandinavian design. And so Dr. Farnsworth's furniture would have been sanctioned by Elizabeth Gordon. And now,
correct.
For you is, okay, how do we square this, that these objects are experienced within the envelope of Mises international style modernism? Is there a contradiction, or are we seeing something else, something more enlightened? I'm wondering how you see.
No,
this.
Monica, that's a brilliant, beautiful question. They're in harmony. They're in harmony with Mises house, and I don't see them as a violation. I don't see them as a conflict. You need to see Scott's latest photography that took place yesterday. It was too early to get the results of that, but the house sings. It's not only about the design of these pieces, but scale-wise, size-wise, proportion-wise, they're exquisite. They're so beautiful. When I was working in the house and fine-tuning all the little spaces on Tuesday, I felt I was in paradise. And here we are at the desk, and this is the desk that was designed, that she used her typewriter, her poems, and she's working. And so this is her study, and the desk that the Italian architect.
Is it Joe Ponti?
No, Franco Albini.
Albini, yes.
Right, and I just recomposed some of the things on Tuesday, and again, she used one of these cane seated chairs there, but the desk had a glass top again. The third element in white metal is the X base that you can see on the left. Yeah. And maybe there's another image of it on the right. And so on the far left, we see her bedroom with a classic old Illinois Bell, Ma Bell telephone. And again, one of the iconic lamps here that were used. But she may have been guided by Kitty and Harry Weiss, but these things all fit beautifully in the house.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Rob. And what I'd like to do now, since you were selected to help the Farnsworth House because of your career, I thought it would be really nice to turn to look at some of the projects that you're most proud of.
Thank you. Good. Well, the exhibition now, because of the virus and everything, Scott has been able to work out arrangements to keep the house furnished in this manner for all of 2020 and 2021. And then the furniture will go back, as you saw and showed it early that was the way Mies would have wanted it, and Mies, it follows Mies's layouts, and that is when Lord Palumbo purchased the house. He hired Mies's grandson, Dirk Lohan, and Dirk helped restore it, helped restore the Primavera paneling, and from when things, the Fox River rose, but that none of that. I mean, Mies cited the house for 5'1" or 5'2" while the living room floor, the whole inside, above the highest floodplain of Fox River. But a whole since 1947 and 51, when she first began to use the house, there maybe been 500 houses that have been built around that area, shopping centers, parking lots. All these areas used to be able to receive rainwater, and it assumed and accommodated that. And before, but now you have a whole area that's built up of many residential areas, shopping centers, retail, etc. And that contributes to the absence and the Fox River not being able, the ground around when it does rain, to absorb that water properly. And so Mies should not be given a bad rap or for that he created a house that flooded, because I don't know the numbers, but whole area, this is now 60.
So 70 years later, and I don't think anyone is blaming him. I mean, I think you're right to talk about the encroaching urbanism. Well, Rob, let's bring it back to some of these mid-century luminaries like Mies, like Florence Knoll. I'd love for you to talk about, this is GATX Corporation, and I'm just going to show another.
Yeah, this is GATX Corporation. It was one of our highlights in our practice for 34 years. I met another architect when I was working at SOM, and that man was Don Powell, and he's an extraordinary planner. And we formed Powell Kleinschmidt after he was at SOM for 15 years, and I have a tenure there for 12 years. And we formed a company to do interiors, like you see the image of the boardroom and the horseshoe table, and then the executive secretaries of the chairman outside the chairman's office. And we were influenced highly by the modern masters and the Bauhaus, just as Florence Knoll was. And when Florence Knoll did her interning and her work after she graduated the master's degree from Cranbrook, she worked for none other than Walter Gropius and Marcel Breuer and did interiors for them. So what incredible training. And then she met Hans Knoll, and he hired her, and then later they married. It became Knoll. But her innovations in space planning and doing large corporations, everything that she did was an incredible breakthrough. So I've derived so much from her, even her classic small Florence Knoll flower bouquets that were always one species, but very, very minimal in scale and not goopy and 18 inches tall. They never dominated any space that they were in.
Yeah, but, I see. That's what you're referencing right here, right? Your little nod to Florence Knoll.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to show another image. This is LaSalle Partners Limited, which I think was a repeat client for you.
We did several headquarters spaces for them, and this was the last one that we did. And we use color as a means of wayfinding, and my passion has always been in color, to find creative ways to use it. And each floor was defined by a dominant color of a blue floor, a red floor, a purple floor, and a green floor. And the fronts of the files, we created a modern abstract design, just like a constructivist painting. And the fronts of the files were each a different color. So they became vertical lines in the core of the building divided, and there's a bumper base as at the bottom so that the mail truck wouldn't bump into the files and scrape the paint off the bottom. And that was a vinyl element that we added, but it was just something for protection for the environment.
Yeah, that's a really nice innovation. I think I also read about this particular commission that you use these that you created these workstations with minimum components, right? So that things could be kind of reshifted as needed.
Oh, absolutely. They were all standard elements, but people that had master's degrees, the two president and the chairman, the people that were uh, really heroes in a sense and pioneers. We used wood tops for desks, and those were all symbols and individual lamps on desks for, as I said, many of the people that occupied these workstations had master's degrees, and so they normally, in other office situations, would have had private offices. What we're going to do now today, after the virus and everything, and so many people are loving working from home and accomplishing what they need to do and saving incredible times to and from work off of their daily commute. But the whole profession, the interiors in the workplace are really going to go through a revolution in the next 5 years.
Oh, I agree with you 1,000%. I think that'll be a really interesting space to watch. And
incredible, right?
Yeah.
And how it's going to shake out and what we're going to do. And I would say economy will play an enormous big part as the mother of invention. It will be wonderful to see what the office of tomorrow will be and become.
Yeah. And the final project that I want to show is not a workspace, but a domestic interior. This glorious, bright white interior. And Rob, my question for you is, did you design around the art? I mean, this Rothko, these things are
the art existed. The art existed, and I would say that the family that assembled this were very, very philanthropic in a wonderful way. And out of just confidentiality and out of respect for the client, but the husband created one of the most wonderful new businesses that America's cherished. And of course, over the four-seater sofa is a trio of paintings by Ellsworth Kelly, red, yellow, and blue. Between the bookcase is a classic red Mark Rothko. On the circular glass coffee table between the four lounge chairs is a stick figure by none other than Pablo Picasso. And in addition, there are other things, elements on the coffee table, between the opposite, there's two tables, circular tables in front of the four-seater sofa. One was one of David Smith, and I believe there's another one that's a David Smith on the cube table that's white lacquer. But the fabric on this was linen and rame, and rame is from the jute family, and the fabric was designed and woven by hand by Sam Caston, master hand weaver in Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Wow. This is a very luxurious interior, to say the least.
Thank you. They were wonderful clients, and then they downsized this big house, and in our book is their second home.
Okay.
But they're extraordinary clients. This so appreciative of architecture and design, and one of absolutely the high points for Don Powell and myself. Now, Don Powell deserves the credit for creating this plan and this layout of the living room, but he treated every project that way. And you can see the innovation in front of the stools those stools are in front of the fireplace. We had to go to Knoll, Europe, to Knoll, France, to get those Mies van der Rohe stools. And
Wow.
of course, the MR lounge chair is in a gray silk. That's to the left of the four-seater sofa on the right, and then the MR table. So these were all tubular things, and we've never mixed tubular and bar stock in the same room. So all these elements are tubular, but these are classic Mies pieces that were designed in 1930.
Well, I think it's really lovely and a really wonderful way to kind of end the conversation, which of course, began with talking about the Farnsworth house and your contribution, and now talking about your career and how they, again, very nicely dovetail. But I do want to bring it back to, to the exhibition, just kind of in closing. And just to say that I think it's really critical to understand Edith Farnsworth's choices. Again, she selected me as architect, but then she rejected these furnishings and she let her taste guide these interiors. And what I love about this project is that it creates this kind of friction, right, with this platonic ideal that most architecture buffs would like to maintain for the Farnsworth house. And that's why this exhibition, Edith Farnsworth Reconsidered, is so powerful, because these kind of nuanced narratives like this one get closer to the truth and really understanding how people lived, as opposed to kind of beautifully crafted photographs. And I think also, again, selfishly, I'm really happy that she chose so many Swedish and Danish examples, because there was this kind of resonance between Scandinavian design and American consumers in the moment. And I could go on about that for days, but hopefully people will, will kind of Google and be interested in that. But I just want to say in closing, Rob, or rather I want to ask you what you think about all of this, and whether you might want to say a few words about why you think the Farnsworth house still matters today in 2020.
Well, it sure does. And it's, as you have Mies van der Rohe furniture, and it's very similar and parallel to Mies's layout from the Mies sketches from all the Mies books. And then you see to the right what Dr. Farnsworth did. Even what I did not cite, and this is beautiful, and I hope you can come to the house sometime in the next year and in 2020, 21, and hopefully we can do a talk and a symposium together. It would be lovely. Rugs, we didn't even talk about the rugs. Edith had beautiful, gorgeous rugs, Moroccan rugs and tribal rugs. And there are 3 rugs that I went to one of the best Oriental rug dealers in Chicago, and one of the finest, is celebrating their 90th year this year. And they loaned the rugs for this house. And this is Oscar Isbirian Rugs, and Oscar Totosian was absolutely a prince of a gentleman. And I took 10 rugs out and tried them in the various spaces of the house. But again, Scott Mahaffey prepared me with archival photographs. And so these rugs in the living room, there's a Moroccan rug with diamonds. In the entrance, there's a brown one. And he said, I know that she had it for people to clean their feet when they came up to the house, because there were no sidewalks ever. You walked on the lawn, or and also there, where there wasn't, there, if there was rain, you had some soil, some dirt on the bottom of your shoes. So the dark brown rug in the entrance was very, very thoughtful and very functional. And in the book, The Broken Glass, she said, so many of the neighbors always referred to me as the woman with the hose and the squeegee, because she was hosing off her terraces, and a glass house doesn't look good if it has dirty windows. So she was using the squeegee inside and out constantly. And they've always referred to her as the woman with the hose and the squeegee.
Oh my goodness. Well, Rob, so much food for thought for future. I mean, clearly we didn't really, we just touched the surface, but it was
Absolutely. To be continued, Monica.
exactly to be continued. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation. And I just want to tell everyone out there watching to remember to check out the exhibition online. And then, as Rob has said, the exhibition will be extended through 2021. So please go visit Plano, Illinois. It's lovely in person. And stay tuned for, future Edith Farnsworth Reconsidered programming. Thanks so much, Rob.
Thank you, Monica. It was a lovely, lovely session. You did a beautiful job yourself.
Nice to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Bye.